Can we all stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, put that up there. Oh, clear from paper. Okay.
Josh, is there any water? I forgot to bring a water bottle.
You used to bring us water, Doris. This
Oh,
is
you
the new
have.
year, this is the new lack of service.
You ran out of cups?
The one night I would love some.
I know, I have like an inch left, half an inch.
Good evening. Welcome to the Harbor Committee. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We have in presence Herb Sample, Marianne Eddy, John Parker, Lily Fell. We have Chick Voorhees from Nelson Pope Voorhees. And for our council, we have the Honorable Fred Steele and Dolores Alvarez. Happy New Year. And let's get to minutes.
Oh. I'm so sorry, did you send these out, Doris?
They were with the agenda,
They were in the packet. with-
Yeah.
under the-
Oh.
Marianne didn't read the, okay.
Mhm.
It's pretty, actually, it's pretty quick. to go through.
Here we go, I see,
I don't
December.
think there's anything.
Right.
I can only find mine, but anyway. Yeah, the only question that I would have about the minutes is that I think we should, when we're tabling something, and it's at the request of the applicant, that we should put down that it's being tabled at the applicant's request. So that in those situations where it's the third request and then we can, we have a record of it that the applicant has requested an adjournment. Or if we requested an adjournment for the applicant to submit something, I think that should be, should be noted. That's really just for the future. I mean, you concur? on
Yeah, that would be fun.
Herb, do you have any questions? about the minutes?
I was absent at the meeting, I think is calling me absent in the minutes that I saw,
Okay. Lily?
From Jeffrey Bragman.
but thank you.
Yeah, it was at the very end.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Really?
John Parker brought it up and Fred said, yeah, that we should have him, Fred, draft a
yeah,
letter.
and
And
I-
did you do that?
I contacted him directly and expressed that the board was an involved agency, would be participating.
Yeah, he wanted us to take a position on it.
Yeah,
and-
no, he's been notified. of our
Yes.
position.
Thank you.
And so just following up on that, it's a little bit of a tangent. What is the scoping process proposed? Is that going on now? Is that in the future? Who knows?
Scoping is initiated by the applicant by submitting a draft scope to the lead agency. And then the lead agency must issue a final scope within 60 days of receiving the draft scope.
I don't think it's been, I don't think they've initiated that.
I don't think any of that is taking place here.
But you're not the consultant on it, but didn't we ask, or we were going to ask whether or not you would be able to advise us in terms of our
Yeah.
asking, having opinions?
Maybe you and I will talk and
Yeah,
see the best way to.
All right,
See if that's
yeah, all right,
possible.
yeah, that's fine. Also, the email where Hillary said she was gonna be a little late, she also said she had read through the minutes and didn't note any issue. So-
Excellent. There you go.
Good girl. All right, well, Marianne has read through the minutes now, and I don't have any issues either, so I can make a motion. Do you have more to
I
say?
just gonna say, in regards to the comment I made earlier, just in number one under tabled, I believe that was at the applicant's request. If I'm not, And number two, I'm not sure we got an actual request to table, but the issue was that they still hadn't gotten a variance. And that was
ZBA.
That's at the applicant's request.
yeah, so that was the applicant's request too. So just to,
Well, I don't think we ever table anything that's not at the applicant's. I guess if they don't show up,
Table Sag Harbor Yacht Club when no one was showing up.
when they weren't showing up, otherwise, yeah.
It's good to note it, just so it's part of the record in case somebody says we were delaying their application, which, as you know, happens from time to time. So to the point.
So with those changes, may I make a motion that we accept the minutes from the meeting of December 1st?
Here, second,
I'll second.
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so noted, so the minutes have been approved. Comments and questions from the public? Doris, is there, well, is anybody in the audience have any questions?
Yes.
Come right up and state your name and
My name's Don Heckman, I'm with the American Beauty, and I was just wondering what was happening with the Long Wharf. If there was a decision has been made, or if that is still,
As to what?
regarding,
isn't the dock being rearranged?
No.
not to our,
That's not us.
Not to our knowledge, we should be notified if it is going to be.
Something on the door coming in about bids being welcome, an RFP for a certain reconfiguration or replacement, but it hasn't come to us as far as I know.
There's nothing before us that I'm aware of.
you might
So-
talk to the harbor master. They may have some information that we don't have yet. I did hear something that to the west side of the wharf, there's some reconfiguration, but it's not been brought to our attention.
Okay, so you know nothing at this point.
Right.
Right.
Well,
You could,
Yeah, I would recommend contacting the harbor master to get
Okay.
I don't know if is he around, I guess, this coming
episodically.
episodic. You could also try Kate Lucasio, who's the village clerk.
Excuse me?
You could call the village clerk.
Okay.
She pretty much knows what's going on in all the
Okay.
alcoves of the village life here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Don Heckman.
Thank you.
My name is Richard O'Brien. I'm the president of the Harbor Coast Condominiums, 18 Bridge Street. And I'm here tonight to address the issue on the agenda for SGI Marina.
Let's do that when we bring that up.
Okay.
That's a hearing and we'll be opening the hearing on that. You'll have the opportunity to speak then.
Please stay tuned.
Thank you.
Is there anybody online that you can see, Doris?
I don't see any, no hands.
No other questions, comments? All right, let's move on to correspondence requiring action. The first item is the yacht yard acquisition, 53 Bay Street.
I'm Louis Rion of the Sagamore Yacht Yard. Here to answer any questions.
Well, normally what we do on these requests for a renewal or of an application. And I'm not sure whether this is renewal. Is the application still open or is it closed?
It has not expired yet. It's due to expire on February 6th.
It says
This
so right
is the
here.
second renewal of the wetlands permit for an existing dredge permit.
Did you dredge once?
5 years ago.
And, right, but so you got the permit, you dredged, you renewed.
It's good for 10 years.
Actually.
The dredging
That
permit.
we had was good for 8 years. They had assumed my permit, which had 2 years running. So that came up for renewal last year before. We renewed it with the state. I had my renewed wetlands permit at that time. So now we're here back 3 years later to redo the wetlands permit for the dredging permit that is good for another 8 years at this time.
And can you tell me exactly what do you dredge?
Same.
No, I know where do you dredge?
Oh,
That's the question,
well, that's
sorry.
all on the scope of the plan. It was on basically the east side of the dock and basically the east side. One closest corner.
Are there restrictions about how far you can go towards Cor Maria?
Yes, we have a dredging on,
I dre-
depicted on our permit. They
Right.
have drawn out where we can dredge. We can dredge there, we can dredge on, we can dredge anywhere on our premise. But we specifically at with this permit mentioned we wanted this side of the state.
Jeff, do you have questions?
I don't have any questions. I was involved with the issuance of this permit originally. I'm very familiar with the yacht yard and visited earlier this week. I've looked at the conditions on site, the conditions based on the permit, the fact that they had DEC permits that do recognize a longer time period than the village, which is 3 years for renewals. And just based on the fact that this was approved just in 2020, and the DEC permit is active and nothing has changed, I don't see why there would be any need for a change in our conditions or a reason why they shouldn't be extended.
You've had the yacht yard for a long time. Do you see a change in the amount of sediment that you're getting and the amount that needs a frequency that needs to be dredged?
Anything in the harbor ends up in the southeast corner. Be it piling, foam, piece of garbage, sand, and mud. So that whole corner is migrating to the northwest. If you go north of my docks, in particular northeast, where the BYC has their float for sailboats out there, it's 2 feet of water.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've run a sunfish aground there before.
A sunfish?
Sunfish. Maybe it's 4 inches.
They what?
Maybe there's only 4 inches.
Goes-
That's
Goes from
our
4
biggest,
feet to up.
Maybe you need a bigger boat.
our biggest problem is the sand, it all goes into the corner, swirls around, and it's.
Stops.
Because we didn't dredge out there, the northeast corner, as you approach that float, is where it's getting shallow.
Yeah,
I'm sure this is in the permit, but just for my information, what do you do with the dredge material?
The dredge material for this project was part of the way.
Outside of Sag
Deep watered
Harbor?
on the upland part of the property.
Yes.
And
Correct.
You're saying you're taking it to Sagaponic sand and gravel for disposal.
I can't display it, but we do have, I have an aerial photograph I can show you on my computer. I think you all know the area.
Sure.
It goes from the 4 feet or whatever working depth to almost nothing. And you can see the shoaling.
Right.
to the east.
Feel like when I first got there, that was about 6 foot of water. Then by the time I sold it, it was about 2 feet of water. We had just these things. And then we dredged that down to 6 foot, so you can put it right in most.
When do you plan to do the dredging?
There's no plan to do any dredging right this minute.
You're just keeping your permit current?
We keep our fingers crossed that, see what it is, the more nor'east storm you get, the more it pushes the sand. The waves do, when you get a significant nor'easter, the waves crash over the docks, over the bulk, over the breakwater. That force of water with the east wind behind it will migrate that sand even faster, let alone this other stuff that just naturally through tide actions comes in. So depends on the weather. But right now, I can say the northeast part is always like the boats, we pull boats off. It's all sand, so we pull boats off there regularly
Right.
in the northeast corner.
Is there a reason why there could not be more docks in the direction of Cor Maria?
Well, my property line is one thing. And technically you only get what's in front of me,
Right, and then to east of that is owned by,
Cor Maria. Now, theoretically, I could approach Sister Ann and see, and make an arrangement if I could. If she would allow me to build docks onto her riparian right area. You know, and for compensation and such not, but then that would be even more dredging.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it would be, more slips which are needed in the harbor, but dredging is always gonna be a part of safe. That's the way it is. Like even the mooring right now needs to be dredged. And you go through there up close to northern breakwater, you can't get within 75 feet of it with a boat. There's just no water there. So it's coming this way, the mooring bridge plus a lump here and a lump there,
Lump, that's a technical term, right?
very much so. Large lump versus small.
Well, let me just ask or may possibly correct you a little bit in terminology here. Because you were saying on your property, doing the dredging, you have a lease for the underground lands to be able to put docks there. So you're talking about dredging on property that you have a lease for. Is that correct?
Now, that lease, specifically one of the parts of it, and your underwater lease will tell you the same thing. If the property must be maintained, and that does not mean just your docks. That means it must be kept navigable.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not disputing anything.
No,
I just wanted to clarify that we were talking about property that you have a,
Yeah, it's a, 10-year, you get a 10-year lease from the OGS.
so basically what you're requesting is a continuation of the permit for the periods in which you continue to have that lease.
Right, well, the lease, as long as you ask for it, pay for it, and don't offend the OGS, because it's right in front of your property, you will get that lease. The only thing that will void a lease is if you stop using the property or allow the property to deteriorate where it's unused, then they will rescind the license.
Do you know how many yards you removed the last time?
Only around 1,000 yards. Wasn't much.
Not much at all.
1,000 cubic yards?
Yes.
Well, I salute you for coming in before your permit expires. You're in a very
So
small
where are
group
we
of
at
people.
Been here, done that, it's easier to get it done.
Yeah.
I think we had the request at the last meeting.
Exactly,
We were aware that this was coming up. at the last
exactly,
meeting.
exactly.
And you
Right.
said the same thing, and I agree.
Yeah, it's nice to have a little informal chat with you rather than scowling.
Well, it's something that we've done before.
Right.
It's just a recurring thing. And I guess if you were down the yard, just keep it nice.
Oh, it's great, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
You see it
beautiful.
almost as a ongoing maintenance thing, really.
Yeah, that's what he's, yeah.
You see it as a kind of an ongoing
Oh,
maintenance.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
dredging is an ongoing thing.
In fact, that's what the DEC calls their 10-year permit and maintenance permit.
Yeah,
Like I can dredge every year,
yeah,
but it costs an enormous amount of money to get that set up.
Yeah.
So you don't just nip and buy it, it's like, I gotta get the stuff dredged.
Yeah.
And then you do it.
So would this be a 3-year?
3 years, that's the maximum we can under the statute, so, to extend it for 3 years is what would make sense.
Right, which actually they used to be 2 years, but then at the last renewal, I had mentioned, I gotta come back here 5 times for one.
The statute allows up to 3, so.
So they
We
changed
checked
to
it
3
last
years.
time, yeah.
Okay.
you have our blessing.
Well, thank you very much.
Probably
Make a motion?
Formal land.
So
Motion.
let me make a motion. It's my Berkeley education.
Um,
Do I
I make
hear?
a motion, yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we extend the permit for the Yacht Yard Acquisition LLC for a 3-year permit.
I'll second.
Second. So noted.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Good luck out there.
Okay, the second item, 27 Bay Street, the Sag Harbor Yacht Club.
This wasn't quite as timely.
No blessings here.
But wasn't Mr. Downs gonna come and
He did
explain?
last time.
But
He
he
did.
just said-
So why is this here
Maybe
now?
he's on the Zoom.
Did we
That's a good question.
approve the moving of the gate? Is that included in this?
He mentioned it, but I don't know that it's part of it. I think we were just
This is just. for-
really looking at the little
is
house on
balcony.
the end of the dock,
Yeah.
right?
My recollection on this is that this was not on the last agenda, but Mr. Downs was here.
He came, that's, oh,
And
good memory.
where we left it was what we would put it back on the agenda, but that I think Chick needed to look and see whether any circumstances had changed or not. And I think that's where we are.
Thank you.
Went to the site this week, walked out on the dock, took some pictures. Everything looks the same as when the permit was originally issued. It's really a very minor permit in my estimation, and it kind of felt that way when it was issued in 2017. Unfortunately, it did expire 2019. But again, I was asked to look at it, nothing has changed. They're doing minimal activities that we previously did approve. I would just think that rather than making them go through a whole new application, it's a waste of everybody's time, that if it is possible to renew it, it would make sense to me.
So the building looks the same as when it was moved from Shelter Island to here 100-some years ago. So
Yes. On the dock. same
actually,
place.
I believe it's the second location here too, isn't it? I don't think that was the original location it was moved to. It was on the
I don't know the whole history.
other
of
side of
it.
the bridge, I think originally, but anyway,
It's been there a long time.
yeah.
I'm not sure why Dennis isn't here, but that was what I was asked to do, and that's. my-
Yeah, I
I
think,
understand that he is out of state.
yeah, my understanding, I think he made his pitch. I'm not sure he thought he needed to be here for this. We just needed to get a report from him.
Okay, so
Unless you want to see this again next month.
No,
you'll bring Dennis in.
Let's do it.
So do I hear a motion to, with,
So I think it was a 2-year.
2 years.
Originally.
Yeah,
mhm,
Whatever.
it can be from 1 to 3, probably. I mean, typically, I think dredging, we go to the max, but typically we do 2 years. So you might want to just do a 2-year extension.
So I'll move to extend or to renew, it's not extend, it's to renew the permit as it was originally issued for another 2 years. It would be from this date, not from when it expired,
From this date.
not from when it expired, but from this date.
I second.
a second, all in favor?
Aye.
So the motion is passed. I guess we could send this to Mr. Downs, who's out of Dodge, I guess, huh? Okay, item 3 is the wetland buffer summary for 15 Long Point Road.
Okay, I know that Will Bowman, he's the bottom one on the screen there. We've been in touch with Mr. Bowman. He had submitted a report that documented the restoration that was done in the buffer based on the approved permit for 15 Long Point Road. We have done several inspections. Grant was out there during an extremely high tide. You'll see in photographs that the area was inundated. And I was out there this past Tuesday when we didn't have those tidal conditions. Both of us felt that the buffer looked good. It's certainly native vegetation. It conforms to the extent that we could review and document what's already taken place. It conforms to the plan that was approved by the committee. And so just in terms of the report that was submitted by Land Use Company, Land Use Ecological Services, we feel that the buffer requirements have been met as of this date.
And these plantings are how old? These pictures are the ones you're talking about from the high tide and when you went, these look
Yeah,
like,
these are current.
They are?
This was like 2 weeks ago. I have
Wow.
additional pictures. I didn't submit them because we already had this report, but took pictures this past Tuesday, with the tide receded, and it looks quite good.
And what's on either side of this walkway? Is that grass? Why do we have grass on the other side? And what's the nature of that walkway?
Pull up the plan.
Is that some kind of impervious material?
There is a walkway, so that is impervious, but let me pull up the plan.
Don't we usually make people do
I
like,
don't know if Mr. Bowman can speak on,
Sure,
maybe able to help shed some light on it as well.
okay, thank you very much, Chick. Thanks to Brant for braving those terrible weather conditions on that Friday. I can't see what photos NPV provided. Our report also has photos from shortly after the buffer plantings were installed in July 2019. To answer Ms. Eddy, one of Mrs. Eddy's questions, most of the plantings were installed in 2019. The land use report, kind of annual monitoring report, also has photos taken in October 22, October of this year, 2022, or October of last year, 2022. So if you look, if you have the land use annual monitoring report dated November 30th, 2022, and look to the last page, you can see the areas, the wetland buffer plan prepared by Areas Design and approved by the Village Harbor Committee as of your wetland permit dated December 10th, 2018. There are kind of, as shown on that plan, there are two areas of kind of walkways extending through the buffer closer to the water. One is kind of a concrete walkway on the east side of the property. And the other one is a walkway. The other one's a concrete, the other one's a pavers, I believe, that extend down to the a little sitting area right along the water. So both of those walkways were existing before the 2018 wetland permit for the buffer restoration was approved. And so the wetland buffer kind of worked around those two existing kind of pathway areas. So there's the wetland buffer plan that was approved in 2018 has some kind of grassed area that's called native fescue sod around those walkways. And then the remainder of the buffer area was about 5,000 square feet and included, more typical native shrubs and grasses.
Chick, does the original permit have a permit for this concrete walkway?
It does. It's shown on the permit plans. As Will said, this was, when this was approved, the ARIS plan was what was approved, and that does show the concrete walkway and the native fescue sod around it. And that is consistent with the conditions we saw in the field.
Oh, well.
But that was a pre-existing walkway.
That's correct.
Correct.
My recollection on this is that there was a violation. The
There
trees were
was.
removed.
We got
I
like a
remember
call,
taking pictures and going to the site.
right?
We brought them in, was the best way for enforcement at the time. And their responsibility was to put in a native buffer. It's a shame that the trees were cleared. I think it's good that we got an excellent result and, we'll have a full wetland restored buffer. But at the time we reviewed it, we didn't modify some of the physical features that were on the site as pre-existing features. We were looking to restore those areas where the trees were removed illegally. Allegedly, illegally?
Yeah. that
No, they
sounds
came
good.
in to rectify.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point, it's third year. So Will, is your request that this be the final year based on
Yes.
the permit? And
Yeah, we
then-
did, the initial plantings were done in 2019. The most recent, the village approval at the beginning of 2022, put that 3-year condition in. So this growing season would be the last growing season. So if the conditions are acceptable or deemed acceptable and we've met the criteria, we would propose that this is the end of the maintenance and monitoring period.
Will, have you been down since those tidal events? And do you feel that there are any areas that have been impacted by inundation that require any further tuning up, perhaps in the spring?
If there are some, no, I have not been down since the end of the growing season. You know, the plants that part of the reason why we did request approval in the beginning of 2022 was to add some more salt tolerant species in that area that was flooding. So that those areas were kind of planted with enhanced with some Spartina patens and some switchgrass. So I'm not really concerned about those, but we certainly could check in the spring to make sure that we still have that full coverage. As much for the owner wants to have living plants, but I'm not overly concerned by that high tide event. You know, they happen, as you know.
And Will, I also noticed some areas that I'm not 100% sure they're consistent with the plan that seem to have more of that native fescue as opposed to native ground cover. Can you just, I'm just checking a couple of photographs. Yeah, on the east side of the property, there was an area that was planted with native shrubs, but appeared to have non-native ground cover.
Like the more like turf grass, you're saying?
Yes.
And where is it, where are you specifically referring to, Chick?
East side of, that long flank of the house, kind of the right wing of the structure.
Well, I guess if, I guess if there's, if there's any area that's supposed to be native grasses that are not, that are the kind of more turf-like grass, then we can certainly replant that area in the spring. It always seemed to me like it was a very narrow band of that fescue buffer around the house. But if there's some places where it's a little wide, we can certainly have that corrected if you want to show me exactly where you're referring to.
Excuse me, Chick,
Yeah.
is this the area you're referring to?
More over in here.
Can you hold it up over in here?
Because I thought on
There's
the,
some clusters of shrubs just to the south of that concrete walk. And I noticed that, it's grass in between, and I think we want to discourage that and look for, and it may, maybe it's remove it and mulch it, maybe it's, some additional lower ground cover, something of that type. But.
So
yeah,
this is on the south side of the concrete walkway on the east side of the property, where if I'm looking at some of my photos, the landscape plan has shrubs almost right up to the concrete walk, about more than half the way down. And maybe it's a little the grass kind of goes a little bit further down on that south side, but we're talking about a pretty small area, correct?
Agreed, yes.
And let me ask you, what's number on the north side, 17 and 18? I can't read in the. What are those trees or big shrubs? North of that walkway where it looks like they're tree clusters?
Oh, yeah,
17,
so if
18,
you're looking,
19.
so those, if I remember right from the original plan, they had numbered all of the trees. So you see each tree, existing tree has a number. And so that in that area, yeah, I see some, 38, or maybe that's an 18. But yeah, so there's individual tree numbers, and then there's call outs for the actual numbers of planted shrubs.
Got it.
If you look on the photos, there's a lot of mature red cedars there. So those existing trees were called out as to be maintained on the restoration plan, obviously.
Okay, so that's showing the canopy essentially.
So I am just gonna try and move things along. Would it be reasonable, Will and committee members, to request an updated report, say by June 15th? And that we can hopefully finalize everything at the first meeting in July, or whenever the July 2023 meeting is. Will, would that be something that you'd be okay with, just to kind of during the spring, tune up some of these areas, make sure the tidal inundation doesn't cause loss, and take care of those ground cover areas?
Yeah, provided that any new shrubs that we install in that little area that we're talking about, as long as they don't trigger another, extend 3-year monitoring period, yeah, then I'm absolutely fine with I think it's fine to just try to close it out in the spring.
The other thing is, we just got the report, we just performed the inspection, and a lot of the, it's going into the season of dormancy. So I think seeing it in the spring would give us the benefit to close it out. What we did see is healthy vegetation, doing well, seems to meet the parameters, but a little tune up and revisit in the spring, and I think we can be done.
That'd be great.
Good job.
That works. The silt fence, can the silt fence come out?
The photos that we had, and when we visited during the high tide event, it was beginning to collapse a little in one area around the concrete walkway. If it's stable, and I feel it is, I would recommend removing it. If you feel that removal of it would cause further damage to some of the vegetation, then, maybe wait on that.
Maybe it's
I'll
good.
probably leave it up to you.
Okay,
Just because, when you look at it in the spring, you want to make sure that you don't have sedimentation over areas that are looking good now. And you got the winter coming. You got the winter coming without the benefit of, a growth period. You might want to leave it for the winter and take it out in the spring.
that's kind of that is in line with what I was thinking, that if we took it out, then we'd be able, if there were any areas where we cause a little bit of disturbance, we'd be able to correct it in the in the spring. But as you know, there's lots of places in there where the fence or former fence is just surrounded by dense vegetation on both sides.
True. And if you do leave it, which I think we both agree should happen, just check it. Make sure it's stable, especially while you can still dig and install it or reinstall it properly.
Mhm.
We have a plan.
Okay,
Okay, so I guess should I want to hear a motion on this?
I'm not sure what we're making a motion
Generally,
to.
we need a motion on this.
Okay, we'll just let it-
Some direction to the
We're keeping the 3-year period open
Yeah.
to revisit in the spring and hopefully finalize it if
Yeah.
it checks out then.
I don't think we need to take any
Okay.
action.
We're both going to submit a report by June 15th.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
You're welcome.
Okay,
See you, Will. Take care.
Likewise, Chick.
okay, so item 4, the continued public hearing wetland permit for 22 Long Point.
I don't see anybody.
Is there anybody?
I thought they had requested
I thought they
an
did.
adjournment.
Correct.
Go ahead and start the, yeah.
Okay, so it's. When did they request the adjournment?
I thought I saw something in my emails requesting.
We may
I
have-
did too.
I
Did you?
didn't.
I feel like I saw something
Herb?
too. with John.
I
You did? Okay.
There had been a previous request, hadn't it, at the last meeting, hadn't it?
Well, yeah, they had at the last meeting also.
Right. maybe
Right,
it
the
was for
last meeting we had was in November, I think. It was.
No,
when you were
December.
here.
December.
No, but
Yeah, I have a
Oh.
request from the applicant back in November 30th, 2022, requesting to adjourn to the June 5th.
Until the what? The January
January
5th?
5th meeting.
Jan to
Oh.
tonight's meeting.
That's today.
yeah,
Today.
I thought I had seen another one.
I have one dated December 20th,
Asking for an extension? Table?
requesting adjournment to February 2nd.
okay.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion. Make a motion to table 22 Long Point Road until February 2nd.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving along, the next item,
So this is the B Smith house. Is that right?
18 Soundview Drive.
Good evening.
Yeah. I think so.
It's the one where the woman came in and she had a swimming pool and facing the water. And we needed to send her to the CPA.
Right, okay.
She was very nice. Got that
Is there
letter.
somebody here from 18 Soundview?
Yes, I'm here. Can you guys hear me? William
Yes.
Shapiro? Hi,
Greetings.
and Mr. Bowman is here on behalf of Dan from Land Use. Well, we were here a couple months ago and we kind of put things on pause so that I could go get the variance for the front yard pool. Pleased to announce that the hearing in December, the board did grant that approval. I don't have the written approval yet, but we spoke to them on the phone and they indicated that Mrs. Vale was busy writing up a big decision, but we're good and we're granted.
But there's no written decision that the board has approved yet?
No, unfortunately, I don't have that. I have an email. Sure it does, probably doesn't do the trick.
Well,
I would suggest that we not take any further action on this until we actually have the decision of the zoning board of appeals.
yeah,
Correct.
Okay, I understand that position. So I suppose we should just kick this to next month then?
Right. February 2nd.
Did they,
Correct.
did they get the other, do they do some of the other things like create more buffer and that sort of thing?
what, I mean, is there some reason why it hasn't been written up?
I
Sorry.
think like I said, they told us they had a big decision we're working on. So I don't think there's any reason for the delay other than them being busy.
Yeah, I think the hearing just closed in December, so they probably directed a decision to be written, but it's not done yet.
Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. I would very respectfully request that the board reconsider kicking this into February, just because of how many times it's been adjourned. But if you guys insist, I do understand your position.
I don't have my paperwork from 6 months ago or whenever it was
Mhm.
that we saw it, the application.
We should have a duly adopted decision of the zoning board before we move forward.
I agree.
Well, I always listen to what Fred says.
Very dangerous
Hello?
proposition, but go right ahead.
Said she said.
Hello?
Yes,
Yes, I'm here.
Give him the bad news.
the bad news is we'll see you in February.
Is there good news?
We'll see you in February.
That was good. Okay, thank you guys for your time.
That will be Groundhog Day, but we promise we won't repeat tonight.
Well said.
Yes, sir. Yes.
I know
Good night.
this might help the applicant as well. I know we've been waiting for a long time for the zoning board. But when we revisit this, I think we'll want a full presentation on the
Yeah,
wetlands matters. We did have a comment letter dated April 19th, 2022. Which
wow.
hasn't really come up because it's been adjourned so many times. And we did note that there was no non-disturbance buffer proposed
Right.
and that they should look at
Sorry.
what we talked
Hello?
about, 285-9A and the alternatives, more practical alternative aspects to it. So I think we're gonna revisit that, and the more the applicant can provide and front load that, the farther
Yeah.
along we'll be when it comes back to us
Exactly.
after ZBA.
Yes.
So that's for the applicant's benefit.
So this is back in April that we had the original design. I
That was
hope
just
I still
the-
have that.
That was the
That was
letter
like a-
finding it sufficiently complete to set the hearing, so the hearing was after that. But that was the last correspondence that we had prepared, finding it complete for hearing. And identifying a couple of things that needed to be addressed through Harbor Committee's review. We've never gotten to that point. So it's not like it'll come back and,
So there's nothing I have to
We'll
rummage
discuss it.
around and try to find.
it should all be in your files.
Well, that's what
as
I'm
far as
saying.
What the applicant submitted, site plans.
But didn't you just say that you
Information.
asked them to do like a
There
a
were
more thorough
comments.
analysis of 285?
And the applicant has the benefit
That's
of
the applicant's
Chip's
burden.
comments. so-
Yes.
Right,
Right.
To
so,
demonstrate to this.
We haven't seen any of that.
right, so, right, but that's when they ended up going to the Z. I guess you just want to be confident that you've really looked at 285 and make sure that what you're submitting to us is in line with what 285 says. Right?
Well, they're
There was
meeting
some
the-
issue there.
That's my suggestion, just to help out
Yeah.
and not lose time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are, just to jump in quickly, it's my understanding from the June meeting that a landscape buffer plan had been requested for, totaling 5,000 and change square feet that's being developed. Also, there are plans for a new IA sanitary system that are also in the works. So those things are being worked on.
So you'll be
So
way
you-
ahead of the game.
Yeah, it sounds like we're not losing any time.
Yeah.
No.
It
Yeah.
should be submitted prior to the next meeting.
Yeah, we wouldn't have anything to look at tonight anyway. So, sounds good.
All right. We'll see you in a month.
So we ta-
We need a
Make a
motion.
Thank you.
motion.
table.
I'll make a motion to table 18 Soundview Avenue until February 2nd.
I'll
A second.
Okay.
All in
All in
favor?
favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Doris,
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay,
All right, I guess the next item is 8 West Water Street, SGI Marinas.
All right, we need a motion.
Okay,
make a motion to open the public hearing.
do I hear a second?
Aye.
Okay. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak about 8 West Water Street?
Don't we get
I think
the application?
applicant is first.
Oh, the applicant,
applicant? Yeah.
the applicant.
Tiffany has her hand up.
Oh, there's the, hi,
I am here. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
yes.
Tiffany Scarlato, 45 Division Street for the applicant SGI Marinas. We are here this evening for a bulk in-place in-kind bulkhead replacement. I believe that Chick has reviewed everything. There was one outstanding item, which was the construction protocol, which I did get him this afternoon. I don't know that he's had time to read that and approve it, but I believe that we're in fairly decent shape with respect to a complete application. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But as I said, it's really just for a bulkhead replacement. It's same on the other property, which we'll deal with, I guess, in a second.
There was a question about responding to the upland. Wasn't that put to them, Chick?
We had prepared the memo finding it complete for hearing. And that was dated November 11th. That's where preliminary comment number 1 was the construction narrative, which Tiffany submitted this afternoon, and I have not had a chance to review. Also, comment number 4 did note that there was no non-disturbance, non-utilization buffer proposed.
Right.
We do recognize that it's an existing bulkhead and it's a replacement of the existing bulkhead. I did visit the site this week, and there are grassed areas that go down to either a bulkhead or a walkway. And so again, the Harbor Committee has asked in the past for some natural vegetation.
Right.
Looking to try and either improve the situation or ideally comply with a 50-foot buffer. That doesn't seem possible on either this or 50 West Water Street, but it seemed to me as though there were areas that, and again, the yacht club will have to comment on this, but may not be necessary for programming and could be reestablished from lawn right up to the bulkhead, which we know is not good, to a natural buffer that removes turf areas, non-native species, substitutes it with native species, controls erosion, provides habitat.
Right.
I did see a bunny run across the site.
Right.
So we know there's wildlife there. And I would encourage that to be looked at, through this Harbor Committee review. Yes, the application was complete, but that was one of the comments.
Thanks, Chick.
I don't know. I'm sort of awash here in paper.
Yeah.
Property east has a natural buffer zone.
So which one is this?
In front of the beacon.
There's the beacon.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So it's this right here.
Chick,
Pass that down through.
Yes,
please.
sure.
Is this area right here?
I don't think that.
Are we doing this one or which one is
This is the property that the bulkhead is proposed for.
Right.
Where's
And
the
And this is
grass?
8 West Water Street.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is parking area. This is where you go through the gate.
Right. This bulkhead looks, this bulkhead, I was there, this looks okay.
Yeah, it doesn't look bad.
And this is where it's incompetent.
Where's that one?
Well, I don't know that we're gonna decide that just by looking at it, right? People go underwater and dive and look. and,
Right.
If you start. But
What
I'm
is
curious,
this culvert here? Do you know, it's not marked on this, but I was there and there was a pretty substantial
That's
wash
in-
coming through it.
that's the beacon pump,
That's that's
my favorite
the old
place.
flooding area, Spring Street, the old pond that's been filled.
Right.
You guys have any questions, both can't jump from the yacht club, so if you have any questions on the pictures or any aerials.
Well, Chick, I'm still, and Lily, you were helpful, but where's the grass and you were
The
talking
grass is
about?
here.
Right, so that's just like a croquet field or something, but you're right, to be consistent with what we've done in other situations like this, we have asked for a buffer as opposed to grass.
Okay, so
We can prepare a buffer for that area. I don't know how many square feet it is. It's been there. I will say that it's pre-existing, non-conforming to the extent that it's been there since the beginning of time, since those docks were built. But we're happy to submit a plan that will keep it that will put native species there. It's actually less to mow.
Where would you put the native, where, you would put the native species where the lawn is?
Yeah, why not?
Is that what you're saying?
What you're asking?
Okay, so I guess my observation of the site is you are going to be removing about 15 feet or so of asphalt to get to the existing bulkheads.
Yeah, they gotta come back.
Right, so a couple questions, one of which is just logistically, how do you keep from getting fouling the bay? Because you're gonna be excavating back and, I mean, explain to us.
Yeah, I believe that's probably addressed in the construction protocol.
It's no different than when they did the bulkheading all along Long Island Avenue and everything else, they had to cut everything back, so, you know, they're gonna be pulling back and replacing on the other side of the bulkhead, so
Right,
you don't have to worry about that intrusion.
okay, so what would be, this is somewhat related to what you could do to the lawn, or more importantly, what you could do to the environment would be to remove the asphalt and put pervious
Parking.
which is kind of the standard if you go just to the house to the west, to the east, and to the facilities further west, it's all pervious gravel parking. I think that would be a gesture that would be I mean, the asphalt radiates a tremendous amount of heat. You're going to be digging it up right now and replacing it with more asphalt. I don't know that we are legally entitled to make this ask, but speaking personally, rather than seeing things going into that lawn up in the front, I would see at least making a removal of the asphalt with gravel of some sort.
But to be consistent, why would you want like a fertilized irrigated area of grass right
You
down
don't
there?
fertilize anything.
Well, whoever comes next might, you know,
Understand.
Yeah.
Well, they could deed that.
The parking lot asphalt, I don't, what is the ground, what do you asking? Like, I don't know.
Remove the
whole asphalt parking.
remove the asphalt and put gravel there. And if you look at,
Like loose gravel?
yeah, I mean, it's everywhere.
We actually required it on another one on
Yeah.
Bay Street
Yeah,
as part of a bulkhead replacement.
Right.
They put in a row, I think it was permeable pavement.
What about pavers? Not necessarily a loose gravel, but a
Yeah.
paver.
If I could, I'm happy to, I understand what the board's sentiment is, and I don't believe there's a nexus between the bulkhead and changing the parking area, but I'm happy to ask them about that. Given that they are going to be removing some of the asphalt in the area, I will definitely encourage them to do that. And while I get back to you with a little re-veg plan for that area, I'll get you an answer on that as well.
much appreciated.
yeah, it's, you know, it seems bizarre, but in fact, what happens is all of the water that hits that driveway goes directly, do not go past go, goes straight into the bay. And having it be pervious is really helpful because the water then sinks down and it gets some filtration in that process. And that right there next to that big conduit, we've tested that water, it's not pretty. So whatever you can do to keep the water that's falling off your building and onto that pavement and then sluicing right into the bay would really be helpful.
Yeah. I
We'll
agree.
definitely ask.
Okay, and you know, it's interesting, asphalt can increase the temperature up to 40 degrees. It's remarkable what it does to heating the environment. So if you
The whole
can,
village is asphalted, but just saying.
Right, but a lot of it's not
We'll look
right.
into it.
One step at a
Tiffany,
time.
right.
Yeah.
because the way-
And Tiffany, a lot of it's not right on the edge of the water.
That culvert pipe, there's a drain that goes directly up the road and everything drains from the roads.
Well, not only that, it's coming all the way from the parking lot and all the way from the
Long
condos.
Island Avenue, everything goes
Right.
right.
and nothing grows there, it's just
Right.
a,
I mean, that's.
Right.
It's bleach.
all the way through.
But you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time,
Absolutely.
right?
I'm just saying, I mean, the
Yeah.
parking lot's an issue with the whole area along the waters.
But That's something that we're actually looking at and trying to deal with the fact that that water is coming in, being pumped out into the coves.
I've been there for
Untreated.
25 years and I've watched it every day and it hasn't changed. So.
Well, don't hold your breath, but cross your fingers. We're working on it.
But the marinas to the west have gravel today, and they go right up to Bulkhead. It would be identical, and it would be something that Ms. Carlotta and you folks can look into and get back to us.
Absolutely.
Okay, so having said that, I guess we hear a motion to,
Maybe others.
oh,
Other people that want to talk, people here.
pardon me, cut you off at first, the second. Greetings.
Richard O'Brien, president of the Father Closed Condos. We became aware of a SGI application with the Department of the Army a few months ago in regards to extending their piers. And I guess the question that came up in our minds are, one is this any way in connection with that application? That's how we became aware of it, was they had to notify us. So that was the first question that.
When you said the piers, you mean the docks there that,
The docks are gonna get extended, well, they're putting in an application pending right now. There's no decision on that.
that's not information that we have.
Yeah,
I brought this.
I'm part of the application pending before.
I have the application if you want it.
It's an Army Corps application.
Yes,
Yeah, we won't see that until that's done.
right. Well, my first question is this in regards to future, possible future construction?
I mean, that's,
Answer that, the answer is no. This is part of ongoing, continuing maintenance on the property. It doesn't have anything to do with any future application at all. It's merely for the bulkhead replacement in place income that exists today.
Right, so essentially, when you're done, you'll have a pervious driveway and a bulkhead that'll look exactly like the one that's there, except it'll be new. Correct? Tiffany?
Awesome.
That's my second question. Is the footprint gonna remain the same
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah,
On the bulkhead.
on the bulkhead.
on the whole complex as a result of whatever they decide they're doing here tonight?
Oh, nothing is,
Is anything changing originally?
Not
no,
according to
I
plan.
think,
Changing.
as Ms. Carlotta just said, it's, what's there is being replaced in kind.
Is there any confirmation that this new bulkhead will not accommodate additional boats? Can we confirm that tonight?
well, it's not changing the dimensions of the bulkhead. That's not what's being applied for.
Right, but getting a new bulkhead, I was wondering, does that increase the amount of boats they can put into that area?
Not any more than the bulkhead that's there right now. Right? It's,
Chick, should we confirm?
I agree with Will. I mean, it's replacing it in kind. It's just the part on the west side of the property. And it doesn't really change anything as far as the configuration of the boat slips.
right. By the way, your condominium, if I understand your association, you have all gravel in your driveway there, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Something to look at, because I went in there and noticed it was all gravel and,
Tell them where we got the gravel from.
So one of the keys about gravel, though, is not all gravel is the same. And sometimes people started off with a tar base, which then makes it like asphalt, because then it's not pervious anymore. The water will go down as far as that tar base and then it runs off, which kind of defeats the purpose. So usually in our permits, we specify that it has to be a pervious gravel. If you're obviously involved in your condos, if you're concerned about water quality, that might be something that you want to look at.
Well, just to clarify, then there'll be no new additional number of boats that this will accommodate as a result.
that's not something that we're even looking at today.
I realize that, but is that a possibility?
Well, all we can say, all we can say is that the application is not asking to change the dimensions, length of the bulkhead, for instance. So, I mean, I don't see how not changing it would give additional room for boats, but that's all we can say is it's not an application to expand anything or to change the dimensions of anything. Now, that's not to say that they won't be in the future another application, but that's not the application we have before us.
An application to do that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Doris, can you hear me?
Yes, Dennis.
You're missing a jaw.
Good evening, Dennis.
I'm sorry, for the last half hour, I've been trying to get in, and I kept getting bounced out, and it kept saying, the host will let you in soon. I finally got in a few minutes.
You've been
ago.
bounced out already.
I'm late. So my case was in the correspondence discussions all the way in the beginning.
That's we approved it without your
Yeah.
being.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, have a good night.
Happy New Year.
Not that we don't want to hear from you, but we,
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
thank you.
Bye.
All right. So is there anybody else that would like to speak? So do I hear a motion to,
I'll make a motion to adjourn this until February 2nd.
with, right, with Ms. Carlotta, so you know your homework.
I do know my homework. I'm going to come back to you with a revegetation plan for the grass area. And I'm going to speak to the client and encourage them to change from the asphalt to permeable, some type of permeable gravel. And I'll let you know what the result of that is.
Thank you.
Okay.
We need a second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, so that's. moved
That's
on.
one.
Okay,
Other ones all look the same.
Where's the other one located?
down the street.
To the west, yeah.
8 West Water Street.
We did a, this is 50. we're doing.
I mean 50. 50 West Water Street.
I make a motion to open a public hearing on 50 West Water Street.
Okay,
Second.
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry, who made the second?
I did.
Because we have the full board.
Oh, so I won't.
So can't be you?
Sorry,
I'll
No,
second.
that's okay.
thank you.
Who has the drawing? That was last. Do you have, who has the drawing here?
I'm looking for it.
All right, here's 50 West. I do.
I think I have.
Good idea.
Chick, is there anything significantly different from this, on this application than the previous one?
I was gonna repeat a lot of what I said before, so it is a bulkhead replacement. It was found to be sufficiently complete. The date of that letter was the same, and the comments were the same. Can submit a construction narrative, which we have, under review, and requesting that a buffer be considered on lawn areas that go down to the bulkhead. Same thing, I took pictures. It seems as though there are areas that are not necessarily part of the program, don't have to be used for anything. That would be better, less maintenance, as was said before on the prior application. And I'd love to see a buffer there. I don't know if there's opportunities for pervious pavement. It's not quite the same configuration, but there are a couple of stalls on the east side.
Well, aren't there on the south side too, paved parking area?
Yes, but they're not really adjoining the bulkhead area. Again, we can ask those questions, but in answer to your question, Will, it's very simple.
And this little pie sheet piece between the basin and the basin, what is that right now? Is that grass?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Where is this?
I should have gone down there today. I did not go down there today. Mea culpa. This area here.
So this right here is like a boardwalk and there's a little grass in between the thing, but it's not on the actual,
Okay,
and actually that walk has been done. So this section and this section and this section, the ones that would be,
and what is this
that's
over
a
here?
gravel parking lot.
Right,
You'll love it.
yeah, been there. And it's clean.
Yeah, it's clean gravel, but this would be the first segment of the project because it's washing out pretty badly and it's a hazard. So
And what's down along here?
this is all new bulkheading and new bulking as well.
But what's in this little skinny
Like
strip?
beach grasses. No, we had, everything we did was part of planting plan that we did with the village 15 years ago.
And what's over here?
Gravel.
So he said gravel,
Mhm.
beach, grass, little plantings.
Grass.
And then I'm not-
Mostly lawn in those.
This is lawn right here, and like I said, it's not great lawn, so it's.
Do you want to consider buffer in those areas too? And there is an area, that looks like a wash
But it's-
platform or something.
What's a walkway?
No, right here, this rectangle next to the
Is it an
walkway.
outdoor shower or something?
No,
It's for feet or washing stuff off.
People stored stuff there, so I mean, that can leave as well, it's not a problem.
Oh, good.
And this is a little building here.
This
What
is the
that?
dock offices, yeah.
That's your office?
Yeah, the offices and bathrooms and facilities.
What kind of septic do you have there?
Town.
You're on town.
Understood.
Oh, you're golden.
So there are five, looks like about 5 parking spaces that do adjoin the bulkhead back in that corner.
Mhm.
The most landward part.
Next to the village, yeah.
Yeah, so again, same thing that we talked about before, those could be converted to pervious pavers, grass-free pavers,
Just that little,
anything of that nature.
that like 30-foot section or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
Yeah.
yeah, that's the paved area, and then buffer anywhere that can be provided along the grass fronting the waterway would be a huge benefit.
Well, that's a lot easier competition than the other parking lot. It's very limited area.
Yeah,
I would love to see the village do the pervious thing all the way around as well.
They're working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That being said, we're happy to take it back to the client for consideration. And we will, obviously, as Bo said, we do have some areas that we can buffer.
Okay, so we're gonna table this. Does anybody else have a comment?
Anybody want to be heard? Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? All right, thank you. So do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to table this until February 2nd?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so noted.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So we're on the discussion item?
I know.
Is that correct? Okay. So Mr. Craig Rhodes is here for the Sag Harbor Historical Society at 174 Main Street.
Correct.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're here.
Good.
See,
We to the meeting and we had a plan showing 3 separate buildings, a new archive, a new, the existing whaleboat shop, and an additional small building for a handicapped accessible bathroom. And we were closer to the wetlands than we were supposed to be. And it was suggested that we take the existing whaleboat shop and relocate it and put the new archive building next to it. And so we revised the plan, and I think you have the drawings in your on the desk. And can proceed, we can proceed with a plan based on that, those drawings that I did. And also as an aside, I would like to say, we were just talking about, you were just talking about the bulkhead just to the south of, or whatever it is, of the beacon. And when I was a little kid, my mother used to walk us down Garden Street and we used to go swimming at a beach there.
Ew.
Before all those docks were there. Anyway, that's beside the point.
It was just a sandy beach.
It was just a sandy beach. Yeah, it was really a nice little beach. But in any case, the Historic Society does believe that we've tried to comply with we've kept the same setback for the relocation of the as we were approved previously, and we would like to know if we can proceed with what we've shown.
75.
So your existing relocated is 68 feet and 4 inches?
Yes, as was previously approved.
What do you mean, did we haven't even had an application here.
Yeah, we didn't approve. Nothing has been approved.
Nothing's been approved. You haven't made a
No,
formal
wait,
application.
the building was there. The building was there. It was previously approved to be built there. It is the same as it was.
By another harbor committee.
Pre-existing.
But it's been relocated.
harbor.
Why does it say existing relocated?
Because the chairman, Will, suggested that we could relocate it.
Yeah.
So just, excuse
Line.
me, you've got a solid
And
line.
that we could,
You've got a solid line and a dotted line. Is the dotted line the existing building location or is the solid line?
yes. No, the dotted line, I think
That's
it's
where it was.
it's labeled as the existing location.
Yeah, that's where it is now.
So they jogged it.
Okay.
over
Yes.
for this rather than staggered.
Okay, footprint of existing. I see it now. I have to turn, okay.
Yeah,
So you're proposing to move it over a little bit, to turn it a
Yes.
little
Different
bit
diagram.
with essentially the same setback as it has now.
yeah, and exactly. And also the side setback, which we have for a accessory building of 10 feet to the side property line.
And what is this? Deck.
And the
Yeah.
proposed building is a new building.
Yeah.
Correct.
The proposed is a new building, yes.
Right.
And
So
what's
when
the
you make a
setback?
formal application,
Is the-
when, I would say that you need to dimension that proposed building. That's not dimensioned here, correct?
What, 14?
Yes, dimensioned on the larger scale plan.
No, it's not
Yeah.
dimensioned
Oh,
to
To the
the
wetlands,
wetlands.
Oh, okay.
right.
Well, it's going to be a little bit greater than the 68 feet for the
Right.
existing
Right.
building.
Yeah, but on the other hand, if you look at this survey, the wetlands protrude into the back of the property in a small center section. The side or the northeast corner of the property, the wetlands do not intrude into. So it's actually, in a sense, further away from the wetlands than the existing building is.
Dick, does this show wetlands? Do we have flagged wetlands here or not? The setback, I think, is being shown from the property line rather than from any
Right.
wetlands. Is that-
Exactly.
This is.
Yeah, the setback is from the property line, yes.
Was the flagging?
So it seems to me as though the setback from the wetlands may be decreasing slightly because of that bump of the wetlands
Right.
into the property. But that'll have to be shown as part of the submission. And obviously, we look to maximize setbacks wherever possible.
So basically, what they're saying is they've got an existing building and you're going to put in another like building similar to it.
Yes.
Which is going to have a roughly the same type of setback.
Yes,
And I know you discussed before, I think why you couldn't move it further back. Is there Can you summarize that just very briefly?
In other words, closer to the street.
Yes,
Right.
farther away from the wetlands.
It's starting to get very close to the back of the existing historic building. And so in my opinion, we've moved it forward some from the, it is slid forward about 3 feet from the back of the existing building, which is set back from the property line as was previously approved. And so what we thought was that if we just moved it a few feet further forward, that it would satisfy the setback restrictions that were previously approved.
Well, I'm just speaking for myself, and I think you should put together a real application so that our consultant can really thoroughly look at it. And I think that you should have the wetlands border with 75 feet drawn in here, and that your buildings should be on the street side of that wetland setback. We're not
We
being.
can't
I'm
be
not-
75 feet. We cannot be 75 feet. There's no way we can be 75 feet.
Well, you might have a smaller building.
We don't even have a large building. We have a tiny building.
What's
And
the
it's
size-
on pilings, by the way. It's not even on the ground.
What's the size of the building?
13 feet wide by about 15 feet long.
Okay, also, okay, so that's 14 and a half.
It's a
That's the
tiny
length.
building.
That's the length of the building. Okay.
One thing is, I don't think anybody here objects to the idea, but we can't make an intelligent decision without accurate string lines for the wetlands. And that might, in fact, Mr. Rhodes, help your case. If we know, and if you know, because we don't go from property line to determine wetlands. And so this is it's very difficult for, I don't know anybody that can make a judgment here about where the wetlands are. Can you, Chick?
No, they need to be delineated by a professional and put on the plan by a surveyor.
Right.
Yeah.
May I ask a question? May I ask a question? And I know you may take offense. What's the science behind 75 feet? What is the science? Does anybody know the science?
Don't go there.
Chick, do you know the science?
There's a great deal of science that supports it. The Village of Sag Harbor did an extensive study. Fred can comment on this as well, certainly from a legal and a process standpoint, but the village looked at properties within the village, the adjoining towns that have much greater setbacks, what the DEC looks for, which in this case would be 100 feet. And obviously, greater setbacks protect wetlands by providing the essential functions and supporting the essential functions that wetlands provide. And that's habitat, filtration of pollutants, stormwater management, and just general buffering from native wetlands. So there is quite a bit of science on it. It's been reflected in regulations for well over 30 to 40 years. And there's a good precedent, and the village has done an extensive study when they updated their wetland law in 2016.
2016.
Early 2016. And so that's what's in the regulations. So we're not really here to debate that. We're here to look at the application of the law. And what I would suggest is get the wetlands delineated, surveyed, placed on the map, maximize your setbacks as much as possible, recognizing that the standard is 75 feet. If you can achieve that, there is a provision for this committee to consider it if there are no other practical alternatives.
Well, my understanding was that, as the chairman said last time that we came, that if we were to maintain the same setback that the existing building already has, and we put the new building next to it at the same setback, that we would be okay. If we have to do the 75 feet, there's absolutely no way we can do the job. It's not going to happen. So,
I suggest you come in with an application, just as Chick described, because we've all been on this committee for years and we've seen a lot of problems. And I think, and I don't think we're flattering ourselves, we can help people solve problems, but we need an accurate delineation of what the problem is. And we don't have that here.
well,
We've
the
never had-
the survey does show it's flagged as to where the wetlands are. And the wetlands come in to the back, over the back property line in the middle.
Those are those little triangular
Yeah.
triangular things? Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
But it's not to mention to, other than the setback, the one setback,
Yeah.
you really need to show where that 75-foot line is across the rear of the property.
Okay, so what you're saying, if I understand it, those, where that triangle is you
Yeah.
believe that's the wetlands line?
That's what the surveyor showed as the wetlands, yes.
So let's say we accept that. And the new building, you're saying, is going to be farther than,
That's my question.
The existing building.
you know, in a rough measurement, you might be making 75 feet.
Right, just looking at
We-
it, Craig, from your,
If that, even if those flags and those lines are where the wetlands are, just making a very rough, you know, measurement using the 68 feet on my pencil here.
But how do you go from
Yeah.
here to there? That's going to be less than 68
well,
feet.
that brings up a very interesting point. If you look at the back of the property,
You're at least
it comes in and out. So if we said in a practicable alternative, we took an average of that, so it encroached,
No.
huh?
No,
You can't?
no, no.
Well, okay, then what we.
Building- What we're proposing is to lift, this building is gonna be up on pilings. I mean, there's no, you know, interruption of the flow of water down the hill. It's not gonna be
So Craig, this survey,
Yeah.
what's the date on this survey?
16.
2016?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it says right here.
Let me
We
look.
need, we need.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, we need current information. And that includes a flag with dimensions as opposed to just a line going through the property. And it might well benefit your case.
Yes, that's my.
Wetlands do change. They're not cast in stone, but we cannot make a decision based on this information. I think what we said to you in the past was that if you did not move the pre-existing non-conforming, then there's nothing we can do about that. But it's the new building. As soon as you move the pre-existing non-conforming, then that puts you into essentially a new structure. In which case you have to go with the 75-foot string. But that's all academic. You may have something in your favor if you get this surveyed. We can't base information on 2016 data. It's not current.
Okay, let me ask this. Depending on rainfall, et cetera, if it's a dry year, don't the wetlands recede? If it's a wet year, don't the wetlands expand? So how are you supposed to actually find out
It's based on vegetation.
the actual edge of the wetlands is?
No.
Yeah, it's based on vegetation, soil conditions, and hydrology. So you'll need an expert that delineates wetlands and is recognized by the village. Or you can submit an application to the village, and we are able to do it, as well as one of the listed consultants. Once that's plotted, as Will said, you know, it could change one way or the other, but it needs to be updated. And then you need to.
Is Mike Hammer's firm, are they considered to be, you know, acceptable for doing this kind of thing?
No, they're a surveyor. That's a surveyor.
Yes.
So there are a number of, do you have a list for us of recognized consultants in the village?
I believe,
I think we do.
Chris has a list.
I think so. So check with the building department for a list of consultants that can do it, or make an application and we can do it. And then you'll have the information that we need, that you can put on the plan and go from there, applying chapter 285.
Okay. So what the bottom line is that if the wetlands are less than 75 feet from the back of what we want to do, then we can't do it.
No, that's not true. It's just a different standard. It's a more stringent standard, different additional standards you have to meet if it's less than 75 feet. And I think it got referred to, but key to that is that for it to be less than 75 feet is to show that there's no practicable alternative to the project. So it's not a no, it's just that you have a heavier burden of proof if it's less than 75 feet.
And it's also, there's like somewhere, and this isn't law like Fred is talking about, but some level of reasonableness. I mean, it wouldn't be reasonable to put, a 5,000 square foot building in that backyard. And, there wouldn't be any practicable alternative there, but the answer would be no. So doesn't that temper the practicable alternative?
Yeah,
Sometimes what you want is.
Craig, in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm simplifying it a little bit, but if you had to meet the 75-foot setback and that necessitated a smaller building, for example, and that's something that just wouldn't, doesn't fit the need of the Historic Society. Those are the kinds of things you demonstrate in a hearing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like a self-created problem. In other words, we're not making the because we're not trying to put a 5,000 square foot, building in a 2,000 square foot lot. We're just trying to do a small building that, will serve the needs of the Historic Society and we don't want to make trouble, but it would be nice if we could, build this building that we need. So
We want to work with you. Please get an accurate wetlands flagging and an
we will do that. We will do that.
An updated survey.
Yes, we will do that.
Great.
And I think if you go to a consultant who does this, they'll be able to put together the best argument for you. At the same time as doing as flagging the wetlands and that's you should get some advice on how to make that argument.
All right, I'll go to the building department and get the names of the acceptable consultants to do that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
See ya.
all right, thank you, bye.
Chick, does a building on stilts or pilings have less of an impact than a building with a foundation?
Absolutely.
It requires less disturbance,
Yeah.
certainly. It's-
So that's an argument that you could make.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of arguments they can
Yes.
make. Marion said we're here to kind of help and solve problems.
I would recommend that everybody goes to the site because it is very
Yeah.
deceptive. What's on the street is very different than the backyard. And if you look at an aerial, the two properties on either side, I think there might even be a swimming pool.
Yes.
There is.
On both
Yeah.
sides.
Yeah.
There's a swimming pool
Craig is
back
still
there?
there, one of the
On
things
the
Yeah,
that's
side
both
on the left,
sides.
yeah.
just
Check it out.
in favor of this, in back of the
Thank you.
existing. In back of the existing whaleboat shop, there's nothing, there's a 50-foot buffer and more
Yeah,
of natural vegetation that's not being proposed to be removed.
right.
So those are circumstances that could certainly be presented.
Yeah.
That would, I think.
They should hire you.
Resonate.
What about the
as
decking?
being
Could
environmentally beneficial.
couldn't they get it closer to the main building by modifying the decking?
Well, that's gonna be up to them and their program and how they present it.
And then we can come back and go.
Please, everybody
"Well,
go
but
visit the
this,
site.
that's
It's very deceptive and informative. And having said that,
that." Okay, so
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
Like this camera angle.
What?
I think we have,
Camera angle.
let's see,
Oh, yeah.
the
you look
Vice
fine.
Chair, Mr. Parker, would like to educate us on his research and
Well, I'm going to be doing that, not as a member of the Harbor Committee, but as a member of the Sewer Committee. Or Sewer Expansion Committee. And I can do it from here or I can do it from up there, but if this is all right, I'll sit here. All right, what we're trying to do is educate members of various committees on the sewer expansion plans that we have.
Can I ask you a question? Is this the same presentation that you made before, 3 weeks ago?
It's the same presentation as I made 2 weeks ago to the planning board.
No, but you made one that was like to the VBOT that I attended?
Was on Zoom?
Yes. That's all right.
No, it's not the same, but
Okay.
it'll cover some of the same thing.
Okay.
It's not going to be extensive. It's going to be fairly quick. And feel free to interrupt me if you have questions, because we have a small group here, but we will also open it to the public. In doing this, I'll go back 125 years. In 1897, the village proposed and New York State Health Department approved a plan to sewer the entire village. It consisted of 7.6 miles of piping for $37,000. Now, it's unclear, and somebody maybe from the Historical Society could answer the question as to how much of that was ever implemented. We do know that Main Street was sewered at some point, probably over 100 years ago. The original plan, one of the features of it, which we found interesting, was that the pipe was going to go down to Long Wharf, where we're going to build a tank. And it was a fairly large tank. I think it was going to hold 50,000 gallons or more of sewerage. Which then they would release as the tide went out. They didn't want to release it as the tide came in for obvious reasons, but that would dilute the sewerage and take it out with the tide. Again, I'm not sure that tank plan ever went into effect, because what I remember is that there was basically just an open pipe up until mid-70s. When the village was sued based upon the Clean Water Act, which had gone into effect in the early 70s.
I wonder if Mr. Rhodes was swimming as a child when that was all happening.
And anyway, the plant was built in the mid 70s. It was expanded at some point when Mr. Malloy owned the watch case factory and had a proposal for condominiums there, and it ended up with excess capacity. The plant has a permitted capacity of 250,000 gallons a day. Regularly uses 150,000 gallons a day, leaving 100,000 gallons a day of excess capacity. The average residential property is estimated to use about 300 gallons a day, so that leaves a capacity of could be up to 300 properties that could be added using that excess capacity. There's approximately 1,800 to 1,900 properties in the village. I believe only 138 of those are attached to the sewer system.
How many?
Those
138.
138, I believe, is the number. And I'm going to give you some rough numbers here off the top of my head rather than look.
And
them
as
up.
designed now, it can take 300 additional units of some kind?
Yes. So obviously, there's a benefit for using up that excess capacity. The average home that's on a traditional septic system puts out 65 to 70 milligrams of nitrogen per liter. The output of the sewage treatment plant is permitted at 8, but is actually about 4 to 5 in operation. So you can see the difference between the 4 or 5 and 70 to 80. So, I mean, clearly we have proposals to use up that excess capacity. It has advantages over individual septic upgrades that people have done to IA systems, because those that are permitted at 19 milligrams per liter. And obviously 4 is a lot less, so we can put about 4 homes on the sewage treatment plant with the same output as one, with an upgrade. There have been previous plans or studies. One was done in 2014 by Cameron Engineering, which was commissioned by the Health Department. There was another one in 2018 commissioned by the village. We're now operating under a proposed master plan for the village. It's on the village website. You can look at it. It's updated on a regular basis. This is what it looks like. There's a lot of details. I'm not going to go into into any of them, but it's there. What has been proposed so far, and we've been working on this for approximately 4 years, is to basically use CPF water quality funding as the basis for funding this, or as the required match when we're applying for state funding. What we have right now is 2 areas of the village which have been prioritized for sewering. The prioritization was done on what I'll say it's a scientific basis. The details are there, but you're basically looking at areas which will have the most environmental impact. You're looking at areas where it would be difficult to put in alternative systems because of the height of the groundwater or the smaller size of the property. Part of the impact is areas that are close to the groundwater, because if you look at the map, and there's maps there of the travel time of groundwater to the surface water, and it varies in the village from less than a year or almost immediate if you have a property right on the water to 4 or 5 years or more. And that's important because if you mitigate the discharge of nitrogen at a property that is very close to the surface water, you have a very immediate impact. Whereas if you mitigate or upgrade one where it's 6 years away in terms of travel time, you're not going to see that impact for 6 years. So those are some of the things that are considered. I'd have to go back a step too and say that if you went back 10 years, the science was that most of the, let's call it pollution, that was causing algae blooms, was causing the brown tide, was causing the death of marine life. 10 years ago, most of that was thought to come from various types of runoff: lawn runoff, road runoff, agricultural runoff. The science since then has moved to it being from septic systems, and mainly nitrogen from septic systems. Dr. Gobler, in his most recent report to us, and he's done, Marianne, 3 or 4 of them now, says that in an area like the village of Sag Harbor, it's 90% from septic systems. It's 90% from, if you were in a more rural area or an area where they had huge estates, then more of it might be from runoff. So if you want to clean up the water, basically, you have to address the septic systems. And the traditional septic systems basically have no effect on nitrogen. They were designed to remove bacteria. through physical filtration and have no effect on nitrogen. The two priority areas that we are hopefully ready to do construction on are an area that is near the sewage treatment plant. And surprisingly, there are a number of properties either right next to or across the street and very close to the sewage treatment plant, which aren't sewered. The Breakwater Yacht Club is not sewered. The yacht yard is not sewered. The doctor's office across from the yacht yard is not sewered. There are properties behind, like Billy Joel's house, et cetera, that are not sewered. Because most of the properties that were sewered to date, with the exception actually of the condos, which were discussed earlier, were commercial properties on Main Street. So you have a situation where commercial properties were sewered and residential properties, which may almost be across the street from the back of the commercial properties, were not sewered. So one of the first areas in the area in East Hampton that we've applied for funds for is basically right across from the sewage treatment plant. And that's approximately 40 homes.
Going uphill like.
Yeah, it goes up,
Rysam.
it goes up Rysam Street. It's a few little streets around behind there. It does go up Division Street. It goes up Division Street as far as what used to be the Catholic school that is now a school that's part of the
Stella Morris.
yes.
Early childhood.
And the other area is basically behind Main Street, down Spring Street, that low area in there. And one of the reasons that's a priority is because of high groundwater. It's not suitable for putting in the IA, the innovative alternative systems, simply because there has to be a certain amount of separation from the groundwater, and they literally have no separation from the groundwater there. So those are the two areas that have moved forward on to date. That's 80 homes at an approximate cost of around $10 million. We have so far, and I'm just going to check my note to make sure I get this correct. We've gotten a grant approved for a little over $1 million from East Hampton. We have another 0.6 million, which we're going to be resubmitting for property hookup costs in East Hampton. We have a little over $2 million in grant money approved from Southampton Town. We've got $250,000 approved from Suffolk County, and we have a grant application for approximately $6 million pending with New York State. Roughly 10 million.
Good job.
Is that part of the New York State? Is that part of what was released today, the results of the New York State grants?
We have not been notified yet. So I don't, it's a New York State grant, but all of them have not come out at the same time, as my understanding. So we're still waiting for that. This is only a small part. As I say, this is only about 80 homes. We're trying to do almost 300. So we're really looking at could be $25-30 million total project. There's also a proposal, and it's been updated in the master plan, that there are some technological upgrades that can be made to the sewage treatment plant, which will increase its capacity. We may be able to add another 70,000 gallons a day of capacity without a physical expansion of the plant, which would allow another couple hundred homes possibly. We'd like to get to the point where about a quarter of the village is sewered. And that quarter of the village, which is going to have the most impact on the environment in terms of cleaning up the environment. The rest of it, we hope can be handled in other ways. And there's some other proposals. Obviously, converting to IA systems, as some people have done, is an alternative. However, one of the problems is the rate at which conversions are being made. So far, it's been roughly 5 years since conversions to IA systems have been available. We have 65 installed in the village. We have 58 that are permitted by the Suffolk County Health Department, but not installed. And we have 38 pending applications. At the rate of installations of IA systems so far, with 3% of the village that's not sewered having upgraded, it will take 130 years to upgrade the village at that rate, which is not acceptable to me anyway, because I'm not going to see the benefit. So one thing that I will add, and I'm just about finished, is the Harbor Committee recommended to the village the regulations for the circumstances in which an upgrade to an IA system had to be made. At the time in 2017, when this was proposed, there were some stricter rules that were considered. And I think it's time for the village, East Hampton Town, Southampton Town, to consider another level of terms of requirements. I mean, one of the things that was thrown out, for instance, was to require an upgrade when properties were sold. There could be other requirements that would require upgrades. And it's just something to consider. If you look at the law that you passed and you look at the results, and if you're not getting the results that you were hoping for, then you have to consider changing the rules to get those results. So I'm just throwing that out as a possibility that the Harbor Committee might want to consider in making a recommendation to the village board.
Most of the IA systems seem to get subsidized, right?
Correct.
You get almost dollar
I
for
mean,
dollar back.
almost. I mean, every project I've worked on outside of the Harbor Committee, just with clients, they're reimbursed.
And now they're
But
not being
they're not
taxed.
taxable,
They're not, it's not
And- and-
taxed.
It's a
Not that
income.
they ever should have been,
Yes.
but.
Right, so that's been
Clearly
resolved.
not.
There have been a couple of projects that have come through here where they were right on the water, where they were doing renovation, but it wasn't large enough. We asked the applicant to put an IA system in and they said no. And I took great offense of that, just because
hands
it's our
are tied.
community, we're all swimming in this water. And I think that that's a case where if, I mean, look at this number, 65 are installed.
Yeah, and I don't think
And you can get it subsidized, I mean, for heaven's sakes.
The county ultimately has to size up this program. I mean, they do not have personnel in place to process these applications nor to crank out the grants. I mean.
How long would this money
They
be?
need the right size.
Because weren't they, I had looked into getting one, they said it would take 3 years.
No,
No,
no, it doesn't take that long. It takes,
no.
I do
It's
them,
better now than it
Yes.
was.
no, it doesn't take 3 years. It takes, let me tell you, it takes
Right.
less than a year unless you have really crazy.
But I
How
would
long
bet
is
the
there
number-
going to be money available for these programs to reimburse?
We've been, on the state level, we've been funding this program. County gets all the credit for it, but the state's been funding this program. You know, we've been putting, not into this specifically, but 500 million every year into water quality infrastructure, of which I think 30 million each year. I think it's even more this year, goes to Suffolk County alone.
Well, I think if I understand correctly, we have the highest density of septic systems in the United States.
Yeah.
Suffolk County.
No, Suffolk County in the United States.
So
We have 360,000.
And our water, and where's our water coming from?
From our groundwater.
Right below our septic
But,
system.
you know, this program needs to be
juiced.
sized up, right sized, basically, because
Well,
it's.
you bring up a really good point, and I don't know how we could enforce it, but it's something to look at, and talk to the trustees to say, yes, IA systems make a lot of sense.
Well, all I'm saying is that I'm just pointing out for those of you who may not have been on the Harbor Committee at the time. I mean, basically, it was a proposal from the Harbor Committee to the board. Now, what we did is we followed what was being done in East Hampton Town and Southampton Town. Theirs were a little different similar, but slightly different in terms of the criteria. I mean, basically new construction, you had to upgrade. Substantial reconstruction, you had to upgrade, and there was different definitions as to what that meant. I think in Southampton Town, you also had to be in a priority area, if I remember correctly. And just to clarify too, you've got several sources for money for this. You've got what I'll call is local CPF water quality funds. You may have the county funds and you may have state funds.
Mostly state funds and CPF funds.
to
The
do this.
county's contribution to this.
Well, they did have some at some point, it may have
I think
changed.
10 million into it all total.
How much is in the CPF kitty right now? Do you know?
Well, I don't know what their fund balances are. I can tell you that in the last 3 months, the bottom has dropped out of the real estate market.
But it went goofy during
I'll
COVID.
give you an example. I mean, after the recession and before the pandemic, 5 East End towns, the CPF was averaging about $90 million a year in revenue. It dropped in 2019 to 77 million. It was an off year in 2019 because the federal government took away the SALT deduction and kind of shivered through the real estate market. So it was $77 million in 2019. In 2021, it went from 77 million to 210 million.
Cracker Jacks.
Everybody moved up. in
This
city,
year,
yeah.
it was slightly less than that until you got to like September.
And then it really bottomed.
And the bottom has really just dropped out of that market. Some of it is lack of inventory. Some of it's higher interest rates. Stock market's having the worst year. You know, there's a lot of different
So,
things where
Fred-
people are kind of pulling back a little bit.
So if I understand it, the 20% has been agreed upon is going to be dedicated to water quality. But isn't that 20% set like right now, we're setting for 2023? If those funds aren't used, they go away, right? They don't roll over. You don't
They have to be, if the water quality funds, if they're not obligated at
Right,
the end of the year to a particular capital project.
right, they go away, right,
They don't go away, they go back into the acquisition fund.
right. So just, John, in what you were saying, a couple of things, like if you go up to the Reclaim Our Water website in the county, most of the updates, the new specs on the IA systems, I think 18 is what's permitted, but most of them, like the Fuji Clean and the Hydro Action, are hovering right around 10, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's an improvement. It's not what the sewage treatment plant does, which is 4. And I understand some of these improvements can drive it down even less than 4, which is really great.
The problem with what you're pointing out is what the testing showed to qualify, which is not the same as being
When
under
it's in the ground.
is under normal operating systems, at your home. In other words, you can screw up the operation of it in a number of different ways. And there's no way to know that all of those systems are operating at
But I don't think anybody's tested what in-ground
Well, that-
systems have shown.
That brings up a good
That's my
question.
point. My point is that under ideal conditions, in order to qualify a system to be approved, they have to be under 19 and they may be able to show that they were at 10. But that doesn't mean that IA system 10 years from now, at Mr. Smith's house is going to be operating at 10. It may be operating at 30.
What do you think?
They may have screwed it up by pouring bleach or something else.
What do you think
down.
it costs to test for nitrogen in an IA system?
I don't know.
So maybe that's something to look at, is that we have people go back and look at the vegetation.
Honey, they already are. The Suffolk County people, I may be wrong, but I think they are all over this, because if you go up to their website, they show what it's been from year to year to year as how these systems have improved. Now, it's a good question. How do they go back and look at ones that have been in the ground? And is there degradation of the system? I don't know. It might be up there on the website. I haven't seen it. That's an interesting question.
Well, various
But they
things.
do look at it under controlled situations.
No, I understand. I'm
Well,
talking
yeah,
about
you know-
once it's in the site, I've talked to engineers and they say, some of these homes where they go dormant for several months out of the year, then what you have to do is charge the system.
I think that's less of a problem now.
It might be, but there are different manufacturers that are in the ground. I don't know, how much would it cost to test these things 3 years in? We're spending a
I
lot
don't
of
know.
money and we
Well,
don't.
there's clearly, I mean, there's clearly improvements that are going to be made to the IA systems. I mean, Dr. Gobler, who's, talked to us several times, I mean, he's had a proposal or a goal for systems they are working on at Stony Brook that I believe, if I remember this correctly, it was 10-10-30. And he wanted it to, let's see, can I?
10 milligrams of nitrogen lasts for 30 years. and
Yeah, $10,000. It was, yes, 10,
Maybe it was 10, 20, 30.
maybe it's 10, 20, something like that. But anyway, it would be substantially less in terms of cost. And hopefully that's gonna happen.
John, a question, back to the sewer service areas. It sounds like you're very close in terms of the amount of money that you need for that to meet that $10 million target, right? What are you doing about connection fees and mandatory connections? Would you require people to tie in once you have a sewer service area and install
That's a great question. And I'm just gonna throw out a number before I answer your question. because I didn't. The proposed homes for those two areas, once we connect them, it will reduce the amount of nitrogen going into the groundwater and to the surface water by 2,500 pounds a year. That's almost like the weight of a car that you're going to prevent from going into. I mean, that's
great.
You can visualize that. That it's hard to visualize the 8 milligrams per liter, but you can visualize 2,500 pounds.
That's per home.
No,
No,
2,500 pounds altogether.
For doing these 80
Altogether
homes.
for 80 homes. But I want to get to your question. We have included in our applications the cost of the hookups. And the reason for including those was when we first started looking at this and when we were looking at the reports that were being done from 2014, 2018, they were estimating hookup costs of $8,000, maybe $10,000 per home, depending upon what type of system was used, how far the house is from the road, basically. Those costs skyrocket. And they went up to 15,000, 20,000, 25,000, possibly, depending upon the type of system. And I won't get into details unless forced to, but there's some different types of systems that can be used for the piping. And the cost, depending on the type of system, you may have a reduced right-of-way cost, but a higher on-site cost, or vice versa. So looking at comparatively high costs, maybe even approaching the cost of converting to an IA system, we said that we should look at whether the cost of the homeowner hookup can also be subsidized. So we have requested that. Southampton Town approved it. East Hampton Town hasn't approved it yet. We've got $0.6 million pending with East Hampton Town for the cost of those hookups.
What about the annual billing to the homeowner? What will the metric be, or what might the costs be?
Well, that won't change from what it is currently, and it's based upon water use.
On water use? Yeah, I have it. I'm on the sewer line. It goes by water use.
Where you get no problem with that is if people use if people use a whole lot of water to water their lawn, they're going to be charged more.
Right, we did two hookups. We had to do two hookups to
that's-
do an
that's-
irrigation line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It took a while to figure it out.
That's the
Somebody
way
else's
around.
plan.
But I mean, one of the advantages of doing sewers is that once you make it available, it's mandatory. both under county law and under village law, which basically mirrors the county law. They both basically say that if you have sewer system available, it is illegal to discharge into an on-site system. So that kind of solves the problem that you have with the IA systems of it being voluntary for people. If we put those lines down the street, everybody's got to hook up. Which means you're going to have an immediate impact as soon as we can get the construction done.
Can I change the subject slightly? Other questions?
And let me just add one thing. We will be back with what I left out here is the next step, and I purposely left out the next step and what areas we're going to sewer. We plan to sewer in the future after this first initial 80 homes. That's coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's great.
Oh, and this was a great article, by the way, in the New York Times on Monday, called Toxic Mess.
Yes.
Yeah, the sewer stew or the septic stew.
I mean, you could apply that to Long Island.
Yeah.
Perfectly, including the cost, which I believe was, they were estimating for Mashpee, $64 million for 438 properties, if I recall correctly.
I have another question. Do we have any idea of the disruption to the roads, like how long it might take or what would be entailed? I know
Assume
it's
the
a little
roads were
premature,
going to be
but,
ripped up episodically
right?
for the
Yeah,
rest of your
it's a
life.
fairly narrow amount that you're ripping up. You're not, it's in one of the reports and I just don't remember.
That's in that 10 million?
The exact width.
It's included in the 10 million.
Yes, it's included. Repaving the entire road isn't included, which, some places might want to do, but repaving that narrow strip where the pipes are going to go in is included. And plus the pipe to the property line.
So they extended the commercial district up to the church 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a huge disruption. Like you said, it was like off to the side. And there they had to weave in through all the other pipes and conduits and stuff that were underneath the street. So that was probably an extreme example of how long it took and how big.
Some of
was.
those streets are really small, though. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, again, this is all based upon the exact location. The cost is based, we've got a problem in costs, which actually, some people really didn't realize, and I'm too close to it to realize that, what the real questions are sometimes. But, they were asking, why does it cost so much to sewer certain streets? And they were looking at cost per property. And the reason is we were only sewering one side of the street. Why were we only sewering one side of the street? The other side of the street was already sewered from the street on the other side of the property. So, you don't have much alternative if you're going to run down the street and the other side's already sewered. The only way you can do it is to sewer one side of the property. And obviously that's going to be twice as expensive or close to that as if you did both sides of the property of the street. So most places aren't like that, but some of the areas that we ran into, and those were close to there was the question is, why is it so expensive to sewer areas that are so close to the sewer treatment plant? And part of the answer was you're only doing one side of the street.
Okay.
So talking about grants, last year we had submitted for, and Chip knows about this, Kathy worked on it with us, a submission to New York State for a grant to study the whole Havens Beach watershed, which would start at 114, every drop of water that ran down into it, where it went, how it went, gray infrastructure, green infrastructure. And last year we didn't get it, but today I found out we did get it.
The study for it?
Yes.
So who's going to do that?
Like 60,000 or something.
It's $66,000 or something, yeah.
That's great.
Who's going to do that?
Well, it's not me, TBD. Yeah, so that's really exciting,
Very good.
to really see, right?
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then the other thing that is just like the kind of thing, I'm usually a really good sleeper. It's one of my talents. I go to bed, no, right, I sleep. But every once in a while, I wake up and one of the things that I think about and I worry about is the Harbor Committee. And I sent you all an email, it was like last July. And I'd sort of been worried about it before July. But I put it together in an email in July. And it was the 4 properties that were on waterfront that had construction that had not come to the Harbor Committee. And then I was involved with Liz and we wanted to involve Fred, but then things changed and I was no longer in a position to work on that. So then you were gone for a couple months. And then I thought it was going to pick up. And you said at one point, yes, it's a jurisdiction issue.
Well, we had talked about having a meeting with the building inspector and.
Right.
I wrote
a letter.
to Liz and I
Yeah.
CC'd you and I have not heard back from
Yeah, not
Liz.
her back. I thought, yeah, so.
And that was some time ago.
Right, so it's been like 6, 8 months. That's one thing that really concerns me, and I don't police Redwood. That seems to be where it happens the most, but it also was 29 Harding Terrace, and it was the gazebo that you mentioned. There was a stop work order, and now it's finished, right? So I am concerned about that. And the other thing that sort of took the top of my head right off last month was the issue with 10 Yale, where we had this nice submission. They were going to renovate the house. There was this, that, and the other. And then Herb and I walked by and the house is demolished and there's steel structure up there. And then I think you mentioned that, in fact, the ARB and the ZBA had different submission packets.
I talked to Chris, no, I talked to Chris Talbot about that, and one of my, I guess this is public. One of my concerns was transparency, and that I'd heard from Mary Ann about Yale, and it never got back. And I went to the building department and I asked about it, and I never got a direct answer. John did. I think Lily might have, et cetera. And I expressed to Chris that we need more transparency because whatever the issue is, 29 Harding came up, there was a stop work order on it, and then somehow that just disappeared. I never heard from the building department how that.
Well, that
played
was
out.
back when I was chair, and I asked him, he said, well, they'll be getting a violation, it'll have to go to justice court. And I said, so do they have a violation? He said, no. I said, so when are we going to serve the violation? He said, when I see them. So
Yeah.
I'm just unsettled, and I don't see that we're sort of working on these issues.
Well, we are working on them. One of the things that I asked Chris was that when a project like 10 Yale is presented and they say there is a renovation and not a demolition, and then it becomes a demolition, there's a code. Tom Priotta wrote, it's in the code about the definition of a demolition. And I can read it to you because I have it on my cell phone. That property was demolished down to the foundation, and then the foundation was added to. That's all kosher. I think that we felt like we got blindsided on that project. It's a big project, and I think that going forward, when we look at these projects, if we only have a site plan and a survey, we're unprepared to really respond. And we can't respond to the architecture, but we can respond to the fact that, I mean, there's some of us that are architects that look at this. This is not a renovation. This is a wholesale demolition. And that may generate a different response that the Harbor Committee would opine on.
Well, here's the thing, the applicant, because we went over there to see them, he told us that they didn't want to knock down the house. He loved the house. He was going to renovate the house. And I don't remember whether or not that was stated here at the Harbor Committee, but he definitely told, it was, you're saying? So what I'm getting at is like, there's
May I say something? I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
just walked back, went to the
Oh.
raised room. And I've been told that just to, and I know I have Fred Field, attorney, if we have the applications, what you're discussing, they're not on the agenda, you're really not supposed to discuss them. Correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, but I have been.
Well,
it has been-
none of these are applications, so.
It has been
I
brought
mean,
to
I
my
think just-
attention, so I'm just letting you know as a board, please. This, has been brought to my attention.
Yeah. And so that's why we have council. I think Mary Ann is talking about this thing in the aggregate, and we could discuss a specific address, but I expressed, and I think everybody has a equal concern, is that we need more transparency. And one of the ways we can get that is if a project is submitted, we need to look at these architectural drawings as well, so that we can look at what really is going on. Now,
I have a different
know.
take on
I
that.
don't really know if it's transparency. I mean, there was an application to do a renovation. It got a building permit based on the approval, and then they did something else. So I'm not sure it's so much transparency as it is just a disconnect along the way.
I think
Yeah,
like
fair
the whole
enough, fair
idea,
enough.
and Liz Vale was totally on board with this, which is that our consultant for 30 minutes of his time, when the projects are complete, that he signs off, which is chapter 285. It's not the building code, it's not chapter 300, that he or she signs off that the harbor committee permit was executed as permitted. And that sort of catches this. Now, yes, suddenly it was a demolition. I don't know whether or not other things about that application changed as well.
Yeah.
Maybe they did, maybe they didn't,
I
but we
don't-
don't know. The big thing was, well, where's the house? You know?
I don't know.
okay, so let me read, you're right, and I have two responses, one of which is I'm gonna read the code. 100% of the foundation remains and all of the first floor walls have been removed equals 100% precipitates a demolition permit. Now, in much of the state, and I've mentioned this for years, when you get a demolition permit, there's a reason for it, which is different than a building permit. And one of the things is that you have to do an asbestos investigation. And we don't do that here. Culturally, we do not do it in Sag Harbor. And so I ask, are we vulnerable? That's a state law, and we're not doing, and we're just letting these guys.
Department of Labor, Industrial Code
Right.
56.
Right, but Will, that's a good point, but it's a different point than the one I bring up. The point that I bring up is just Harbor Committee centric, which is that we got an application, we signed off on it with a certain application packet. And then it segued its way through the village and it changed.
Yeah.
And the thing that we know changed is that it's a demolition, not a renovation, but there may be other changes. And that's what I'm concerned about. Yes, I think you're totally right to be concerned about ocean, et cetera, about demolitions and asbestos, but that's kind of outside of my immediate concern, which is, are we just this little committee out there on some little tether talking to ourselves? And what happens when these things actually get executed? Are our plans actually, implemented the way we sign off on them?
I think your point is well taken. We sometimes on projects are dealing with a few cubic square feet here and there, little things. And it's all about the precious quality of the water and the nature that we're adjacent to. And when these larger things happen and we get blindsided, it's miscommunicated for whatever reason, then it looks like our work is for naught.
Well, let's just go back. And, Doris, I hear what you say, but our counsel is here and he hasn't stopped our discussion. I'm concerned about properties that are doing construction that should be subject to 285 that aren't being brought to the Harbor Committee. I think that's an issue. And you said you're working on that. I would really, I know it's not my prerogative to call that meeting, but who would call that meeting? Fred, you're not going to call the meeting, right? Liz Vale's not. Does it have to be the chair of the?
I
Harbor
called
Committee?
for the meeting. I wrote to Fred, I wrote to Liz, and I have not heard back from, I addressed Liz and I CC'd Fred, and I have not heard back.
When was that? Months ago?
Yes, months.
Things fall through the cracks. I would just ask you as a member that puts in a lot of work, as we all do, that you follow up with that and you pursue that.
Are there specific properties, and I may have missed an email. that you
Yeah, it's
sent
in
on this.
July. I'll re-forward it to you.
Okay, I probably wouldn't remember from July, but there's specific properties that you cited.
Yeah.
Which
Yes.
construction was done
Yes.
without an application to, to the Harbor Committee. And was this significant construction, or are we talking about?
Yes,
I mean, we're not talking about something that could be an
No, what they're-
interpretation as to whether it was fixing something which wouldn't
it's
be
significant,
subject, or
significant.
wasn't a repair that wouldn't be subject to it, because some repairs are not subject to the, even though they're within the physical jurisdiction, they don't come under the statute. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about,
Right.
substantial reconstruction or renovation or new building or something of that sort.
Will you re-forward that email to everyone, please? Thank you.
Also, maybe for the next meeting, we can actually look at what is the definition of a renovation versus a demolition and new construction.
Well, here's,
The
I
last
just
time-
gave you the definition of a demolition, and I can tell you in the state of Massachusetts, if you demolish a building without a permit, 2 years, stop work, 10% of cost
But
of
it-
the
but that's in
value.
the Sag Harbor Code that you
No,
just.
that's
read me?
Massachusetts.
Right.
I'm just telling you that we don't have any teeth
Uh,
in the and I've discussed that with various people.
But that should be a ZBA, ARB, I don't know.
No, it should be a building code issue. What
Yeah.
represents and the last time, and all I'm saying was the last time I looked at the Sag Harbor Code, that definition was very vague.
Here it is right here.
But can I ask a question? If we issued a permit and the actual project or the nature of the project changed
Here.
substantively,
This
shouldn't we
is Sag Harbor.
revisit it? Or wouldn't there be a requirement that we would need to revisit?
That's what we're talking about.
That's what
No,
I'm
but
talking
isn't it
about.
still in process? The applications were redone or?
Well, it's like Fred said, it's an enforcement issue.
Okay.
So we issue a permit for ABC and they do roses and dahlias. There's no loop back.
Well, do you know what the date of these are, these criteria are?
Well, this was, it was done under the previous building inspector, but I don't think it's changed since then. Tom.
But in the
No, I
last-
don't think the building.
Last 7 years or so,
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Okay. All right.
All I can say is, I mean, sometimes it's a matter of interpretation, and I'm not taking a position one way or the other on this, but just, reporting, because
Yeah, it's not.
on one of these properties, I did have a discussion with the and it's a question of, does what was done fit the plans that were submitted? And the answer is yes. And how did they get to it? Differed, but does that make it a violation? To some people, that's a question of interpretation. When the finished product meets our permit and meets the other permits that were granted.
But that's not what the code says.
But
I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just saying that this.
we just go through a lot of time and trouble here, John, and you as much as anybody. And I think it's like, Chick talking about why we have a 75-foot setback. There's been a lot of angst and effort and money put into developing these setbacks and these various rules. And it's all to preserve what we say we hold dear, which is the waters and bays and coves of Sag Harbor. And that's what I feel that you know, like I say, I wake up in the middle of the night and I think about this and I go, well, what can I do?
Well, I think it's also an accountability issue. I mean, if we're making certain people adhere to the requirements, for example, the Historical Society has to do these things.
Well,
and
how long are
everybody
they
should.
gonna do that? We're gonna become a mush ball.
Irrelevant.
Mhm.
All right.
Anyway, on that cheery note.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
It
Happy
is.
New Year, everybody. Let's get out of here.
Need a motion
Do I
I'm
hear a
motion.
to
Okay.
adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Always in order.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Doris, thank you. You can stop recording.
So Fred, I had to go to a funeral to find out that you noticed the sign.